If you've ever been to a zoo, you've seen a peacock, not in an enclosure behind glass, not behind a fence with an information placard, just wandering around the walkways like it owns the place, fanning its tail for selfies, stealing French fries from the snack bar, and screaming at children. Peacocks at zoos operate on a level of freedom and entitlement that no other animal in the facility enjoys, and there are very good reasons for that. So today, I'm going to go over 10 reasons why every zoo loves peacocks. Reason number 1. They're the only exhibit that doesn't need an exhibit. This is the most obvious reason and the one that every zoo director will tell you first. Peacocks don't require an enclosure. They don't need fencing, moats, glass barriers, climate-controlled buildings, or any of the expensive infrastructure that every other zoo animal demands. You just let them walk around. Indian peafowl have been domesticated and kept in captivity for over 4,000 years, longer than almost any other bird species on the planet. And the result of all that time around humans is a bird that is completely, utterly comfortable in close proximity to people, noise, crowds, strollers, screaming children, and the general controlled chaos of a busy zoo on a Saturday afternoon. They don't flee. They don't panic. They don't hide. They strut. They strut directly into foot traffic with the confidence of an animal that knows nobody is going to do anything about it. Their calm, almost regal tolerance of human activity means they can be free-roaming residents of the entire zoo grounds, rather than animals confined to a single exhibit behind barriers. And that's a massive logistical and financial advantage for the institution. Every exhibit space at a zoo costs real money to build, maintain, staff, and clean. A new large mammal enclosure can cost millions of dollars. Even a modest bird aviary involves fencing, netting, drainage, perching structures, and feeding stations. Peacocks cost essentially nothing because their exhibit is the entire zoo, and their keeper is whoever fills the grain bucket in the morning. The tradition of letting peacocks roam free in zoological collections goes back much further than modern zoos. Wealthy elites and royalty who maintained private menageries in ancient Greece as far back as 300 BCE allowed peacocks to wander their grounds as living decorations. Alexander the Great reportedly brought Indian peafowl back from his campaigns in Asia, and they became prized ornamental birds across the ancient Mediterranean world. That tradition carried forward through the Roman Empire, through medieval European estates and palaces, through Victorian-era zoological gardens, and directly into the modern zoo system that exists today. The peacock walking past you on the zoo path is participating in a tradition of free-roaming captive display that is literally thousands of years old and spans more civilizations than most history courses cover. No other zoo animal can claim that kind of institutional continuity. Reason number 2, they're a guaranteed crowd pleaser. Zoos live and die on visitor engagement, and peacocks deliver it effortlessly day after day without training, without keeper presentations, and without scheduled showtimes. A male peacock in full display, with that 5-foot fan of iridescent feathers spread wide and shimmering in the sunlight, the eye spots glowing blue and green and gold, the whole structure vibrating with a rhythmic rustle as the bird shakes it for the benefit of a nearby peahen, stops people in their tracks every single time. It doesn't matter if you're a toddler or a retiree, if you've been to the zoo once or 100 times, if you're a serious birder or someone who can't tell a robin from a sparrow. A displaying peacock gets phones out of pockets faster than almost any other animal on the grounds, including the big cats. Ask any zoo photographer what their most requested image is, and the peacock in display is almost always in the top 3. And because peacocks are free-roaming, the display can happen anywhere on the property at any time. It's not confined to a specific exhibit that visitors might skip. It can happen on the main pathway, next to the snack bar, in front of the gift shop, or in the middle of the parking lot. These spontaneous, unscripted moments of wonder are the ones that visitors remember and talk about long after they've forgotten what was in the reptile house, or whether the lions were awake. And the encounters are almost always positive. Peacocks don't bite. They don't charge unless provoked. They're large enough to be impressive but not threatening. They're the perfect combination of exotic, beautiful, and approachable. The photos are also universally shareable. A peacock in full display is one of the most photogenic animals on the planet, and visitors who post peacock photos and videos on social media are providing the zoo with free, organic marketing every single day. A tiger behind glass requires a professional photographer with the right lens, the right angle, and good lighting to produce a shareable image that doesn't have glare and reflections all over it. A peacock standing 3 feet away in direct sunlight requires nothing but a cell phone and a finger on the shutter button. The marketing value alone makes peacocks one of the highest return on investment animals any zoo can have. Reason number 3, they require almost no specialized care. Peacocks are among the hardiest, most low-maintenance birds a zoo can keep, and this is something that zookeepers appreciate on a deeply practical level. They eat a simple, inexpensive diet of commercial poultry feed, grain, insects, and whatever scraps they can scrounge from visitors, which they will absolutely do whether the zoo wants them to or not. A peacock that has learned that the trash can near the ice cream stand contains French fries will patrol that trash can with the dedication of a security guard. They don't need specialized veterinary care beyond what any competent avian vet can provide. They don't need temperature-controlled environments in most climates, because Indian peafowl are remarkably cold-tolerant and can handle winter temperatures well below freezing as long as they have dry, sheltered roosting spots. Zoos in Minnesota, Michigan, Illinois, and other northern states keep free-roaming peafowl year-round without any winter housing, and the birds do fine. They roost in trees every night on their own. They forage on the grounds during the day, and they reproduce readily without any breeding management, artificial insemination, or hormone monitoring. Compare this to the care requirements of a gorilla, which needs a multi-million-dollar climate-controlled facility, a team of dedicated keepers with specialized training, a carefully formulated diet, behavioral enrichment programs designed by animal psychologists, and regular veterinary monitoring by a primate specialist. Or a polar bear, which needs a massive exhibit with a temperature-controlled pool, filtration systems, hundreds of pounds of food per week, and constant environmental enrichment to prevent the stereotypic pacing behaviors that are the hallmark of a bored, understimulated apex predator in captivity. Or even a flamingo flock, which needs a heated indoor facility in winter, specialized carotenoid-supplemented food to maintain its color, and careful flock management to encourage breeding. A peacock needs a bag of grain, a tree to sleep in, and an audience. The cost-to-impact ratio is practically unbeatable in the zoo world. Reason number 4, they create an immersive atmosphere. One of the biggest challenges in modern zoo design is making visitors feel like they're experiencing something more than a series of cages with animals in them. Zoos spend millions of dollars on landscaping, themed pathways, naturalistic barriers, and exhibit design to create an immersive, almost transportive atmosphere where visitors feel like they've entered the animal's world rather than just walking past it. Peacocks contribute to that atmosphere for free, and they do it more effectively than most designed exhibits. Having a brilliantly colored, exotic-looking bird walking casually alongside visitors on the path, perching on railings and benches, or suddenly fanning its tail in a garden area creates a sense of immersion and direct animal encounter that no exhibit behind glass can match. The peacock is not something you're observing from a distance through a viewing window. It's right there with you, sharing your physical space, and that proximity creates a sense of wonder and connection that zoos work incredibly hard to achieve with their other animals, but rarely accomplish as effortlessly as a single free-roaming peacock does, just by walking past. For children especially, encountering a free-roaming peacock is often one of the most vivid and memorable moments of an entire zoo visit. It's an animal that's beautiful, exotic, surprisingly large when you're standing next to it at toddler height, and completely accessible without any barriers. You don't need to wait in line, press against a window, or squint into a dark enclosure. The peacock walks up to you, or more accurately, walks past you as if you don't exist, which is somehow even more impressive. That casual indifference to human presence is part of what makes the encounter feel so authentic and wild. The peacock isn't performing for you. It isn't trained. It isn't being prompted by a keeper. It's just existing in its own magnificent way, and you happen to be there to witness it. That's the kind of experience that stays with a 5-year-old forever. Reason number 5, they're natural pest controllers. This is a reason that zoo staff and groundskeepers appreciate far more than visitors do, but it's a genuine and consistent benefit. Peafowl are omnivores with a broad appetite that includes a wide variety of insects, spiders, centipedes, millipedes, small rodents, lizards, and snakes. In their native habitat in South Asia, they're specifically valued by rural communities for keeping snake populations in check around homes and farms, including young venomous species like cobras. In a zoo setting, they provide a similar, smaller-scale pest control service by consuming insects, beetles, grubs, and other invertebrates from the grounds throughout the day as they forage across the property. This isn't a major factor in the zoo's formal pest management strategy, and no zoo director would list it as a primary reason for keeping peafowl. But it's a free, ongoing, year-round benefit that comes automatically with having peafowl on the property. Every bug a peacock eats is a bug that doesn't end up in a food service area, a gift shop, or an animal enclosure where it might cause hygiene concerns. The peacocks don't file work orders, they don't charge by the hour, and they never take a day off. They just patrol and eat, which is exactly what you want from a pest control service. Reason number 6, they teach visitors about sexual selection without a lecture. The peacock is one of the most famous examples of sexual selection in the entire animal kingdom. It's the textbook case, literally. Open any introductory biology textbook to the chapter on evolution, and you'll almost certainly find a photograph of a peacock's train illustrating the concept of sexual selection. Having live peacocks on zoo grounds gives educators an immediate, tangible, visually spectacular way to explain one of the most important concepts in evolutionary biology without needing a classroom, a PowerPoint presentation, or even a prepared lesson plan. When a male fans his enormous train and shakes it vigorously at a disinterested female who walks right past him without stopping, that's a live demonstration of Darwin's theory happening in real time, right in front of you, and it's funnier and more memorable than anything a textbook can deliver. Educators can talk about why the train exists, how females evaluate males, why the feathers are structurally iridescent rather than pigmented, why some males have more eye spots than others, and what the real-world trade-offs are between being beautiful and being able to escape predators when you're dragging a 5-foot fan of feathers behind you. They can explain that the very existence of the peacock's tail troubled Charles Darwin so much that he wrote it made him physically sick because it seemed to directly contradict his theory of natural selection, and that this discomfort led him to develop the theory of sexual selection as a complementary explanation. All of this can be delivered while pointing at a living, breathing, displaying example standing 10 feet away from a group of fascinated children and their equally fascinated parents. This kind of hands-on, in-the-moment educational opportunity is exactly what modern zoos are designed to provide, and peacocks deliver it more reliably and more dramatically than almost any other animal on the grounds. Lions don't hunt on cue. Elephants don't demonstrate social hierarchies on demand. Gorillas don't display mating behaviors in front of visitors on a predictable schedule, but a peacock will fan his tail in front of visitors multiple times a day during the breeding season without any prompting whatsoever, turning the entire zoo into an evolutionary biology classroom with the most charismatic visual aid imaginable. Reason number 7, they almost never leave. One of the obvious concerns with letting an animal roam free at a zoo is that it might simply leave, but peacocks, despite being fully capable of flight, rarely wander off the property. Indian peafowl are non-migratory, highly territorial, and deeply habituated to their home range. Once a population of peafowl establishes itself at a zoo, the birds tend to stay put for generations. They know where the food is. They know where the best roosting trees are. They know where the safest spots are to shelter from weather and avoid disturbance. They know exactly which trash cans near which food vendors produce the best scraps. And they know, from a lifetime of experience, that the zoo grounds provide everything they need: food, water, shelter, mates, and safety, without any of the risks of the surrounding landscape, which may include roads, dogs, predators, and a general lack of tourists willing to share their French fries. Occasionally, a bird will wander off the property, especially a young male looking to establish his own territory away from the dominant male's range. But the vast majority of zoo peafowl stay within the zoo's boundaries voluntarily for their entire lives. They're not staying because they can't leave. They're staying because leaving would be a terrible decision from the peacock's perspective. And peacocks, despite their reputation for vanity, are not stupid birds. This site fidelity is reinforced by the fact that peafowl are social birds that form stable groups with strong internal bonds. Peahens stay near the dominant male in their area. Chicks stay close to their mother throughout their first year, and young birds grow up knowing the zoo as the entirety of their world. The population is essentially self-contained and self-sustaining, which means the zoo gets a permanent reproducing population of spectacular birds without having to actively manage their movements or maintain any kind of containment infrastructure. The peacocks manage themselves, and they do it better than most zoo-managed species. Reason number 8, they're incredibly photogenic and generate massive social media engagement. I touched on this briefly under the crowd pleaser entry, but it deserves its own section because the social media impact of free-roaming peacocks is genuinely significant for modern zoos operating in a digital-first marketing environment. In an era where zoos depend heavily on social media for awareness, community engagement, event promotion, and fundraising, peacocks are content generation machines that never stop producing. A peacock in full display is inherently viral material. It doesn't need a clever caption, it doesn't need editorial context, and it doesn't need professional photography or post-production to look absolutely spectacular. A visitor with a cell phone can capture a gallery-quality image of a displaying peacock from 3 feet away and post it to Instagram, TikTok, or Facebook within seconds of taking it. The images practically share themselves. Zoo social media accounts regularly feature their peafowl in posts, stories, and reels, and these posts consistently generate high engagement because the images are so visually striking that they stop the scroll. Some zoos have even given their most recognizable peacocks names and built mini-celebrity followings around specific individuals, turning a free-roaming bird that costs almost nothing to maintain into a branded mascot that drives both online engagement and in-person visits. The San Diego Zoo, the Bronx Zoo, and dozens of smaller facilities have all leveraged their peacock populations for social media content that reaches audiences far beyond the zoo's physical visitor base. The marketing return on investment for a bird that costs essentially nothing to keep is extraordinary. A single viral peacock video can reach more people than an entire paid advertising campaign, and the bird generates new content every single day just by walking around and being beautiful. Reason number 9. They breed easily in captivity. Unlike many exotic species that require carefully managed breeding programs, hormone monitoring, controlled introductions, and specialized enclosures to reproduce successfully, peafowl breed readily and reliably in captivity with almost no human intervention whatsoever. They sort out their own mate selection through the male's competitive displays. The peahens choose their preferred males without any guidance from zoo staff. Peahens lay clutches of 4 to 8 eggs in ground nests that they select and build on their own, incubate them for about 28 days, and raise the chicks largely independently, with no hand-rearing, no supplemental feeding, and no incubator required. The chicks are precocial and can follow their mother and feed themselves within days of hatching. Zoo populations of peafowl tend to grow naturally and continuously, and in fact, managing the population to prevent it from getting too large is often a bigger challenge for zoo staff than getting them to breed in the first place. Many zoos periodically relocate surplus peafowl to other institutions, farms, estates, nature centers, or educational programs to keep their on-grounds population at a manageable size. Some zoos have even resorted to replacing eggs with dummy eggs, or removing nests to slow the population growth, which is the opposite problem that most zoo breeding programs face. For a zoo, this self-sustaining population model is the ideal scenario, requiring minimal management effort and almost no cost. The peacocks handle their own recruitment, their own mate selection, their own nesting, their own chick rearing, and their own population maintenance. The zoo handles the occasional relocation of surplus birds and the daily grain. It's about as low maintenance as animal management gets in any zoological facility. And reason number 10, they make the zoo feel like a zoo. This is the reason that's hardest to quantify, but might be the most important one of all. There's something about having peacocks walking freely on the grounds that gives a zoo a specific, distinctive atmosphere that would be noticeably absent without them. They add a layer of unpredictability, color, and life to the space between the exhibits. They fill the gaps. Without peacocks, a zoo pathway is just a walkway between enclosures. With peacocks, it's a space where you might turn a corner and come face to face with an animal that looks like it was painted by an artist who ran out of restraint. They are, in a very real sense, the connective tissue of the zoo experience. Think about what a zoo visit would feel like without them. You'd walk from the lions to the giraffes, look at the animals, read the signs, and move on to the next exhibit. It would be informative but sterile. The peacock breaks that rhythm. It's the unscripted moment. It's the animal that walks into your photo without being invited. It's the bird that screams at your toddler from 10 feet away and makes your teenager laugh so hard they forget to look at their phone. It's the reason you look down while walking because you might be about to step on a tail feather that's worth framing. Peacocks add texture, surprise, and a sense of wildness to an environment that can sometimes feel overly controlled and curated. They remind you that a zoo is a living place where animals exist on their own terms, not just behind glass for your viewing convenience. The peacock is the one animal in the zoo that refuses to be an exhibit. It insists on being a resident. And that distinction between an animal on display and an animal simply living its life in your presence is exactly the kind of experience that makes a zoo visit feel meaningful rather than transactional. Every zoo director knows this intuitively, even if they couldn't articulate it in exactly those terms. Peacocks are cheap, beautiful, self-sustaining, educational, pest-controlling, social media-generating, crowd-pleasing animals that create immersive atmosphere without requiring a single dollar of exhibit infrastructure. They've been doing this job for over 2,000 years across 4 continents, from the gardens of ancient Greece to the walkways of the San Diego Zoo, and they do it better than any animal on the planet. They are the ultimate zoo animal because they don't even need the zoo to want them. They just show up, stay forever, and make everything better. The question isn't why zoos have peacocks. The question is how any zoo could possibly justify not having them. So there you have it. Those are 10 reasons why every zoo loves peacocks. They don't need enclosures. They generate free marketing. They control pests. They teach evolutionary biology without a classroom. They breed themselves. And they turn an ordinary walkway into the most photographed spot on the property. They are, without question, the highest value, lowest cost animal any zoo can keep. Let me know about your best zoo peacock encounter in the comments below, and thanks so much for watching.